Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashte Prayasho Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya Bhagavati Bhavati Naishtiki. Chapter 24, Canto 10, Worshipping Govardhan Hill, Chapter Summary. In this chapter, Lord Sri Krishna crushes the pride of Indra by prohibiting the sacrifice intended for him and initiating a substitute sacrifice and worship of Govardhan Hill. When Sri Krishna saw the coward men busily preparing for a sacrifice to Indra, he inquired about it from their king, Nanda. Nanda explained that the rain given by Indra enables all living entities to maintain their lives, and therefore this sacrifice would be excused to satisfy him. Krishna would be executed to satisfy him. Krishna responded, it is because of karma alone that living entities take birth in a certain body, experience varieties of happiness and suffering in that body, and then give it up as the karma pertaining to it runs out. Thus it is karma alone that is our enemy, our friend, our guru, and our Lord. And Indra can do nothing to alter happiness and distress of anyone, for everyone is tightly bound by his karmic reactions. The material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance bring out the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this world. The clouds give forth rain when they are impelled by the mode of passion, and cowards prosper by protecting cows. Furthermore, the coward's proper residence is in the forests and on the hills. Therefore, you should offer worship to the cows, the brahmanas, and the Govardhan hill. After Krishna spoke thus, he arranged for the coward men to worship Govardhan with the paraphernalia collected for the sacrifice to Indra. Then he then assumed a huge, unprecedented transcendental form and devoured all the food and other offerings presented to Govardhan. As he did so, he proclaimed to the coward community that although they had worshipped Indra for so long, he had never appeared in person, whereas Govardhan himself had now manifested before their eyes and eaten their offerings of foodstuffs. Therefore, they should now all offer obeisances to Govardhan hill. Then Lord Krishna joined the cowards in offering obeisances to his own newly assumed form. Shri Shukha Vacha Bhagavan api tatraiva baladevena samyuta pasyannivasan gopan indrayaga kritodyaman. Shukadeva Goswami said, while staying in the very place with his brother Baladev, Lord Krishna happened to see the coward men busily arranging for a sacrifice to Indra. According to Srila Sridhar Swami and other acharyas, the words Tatra Eva in this verse indicate that Lord Krishna stayed in the village of the Brahmanas whose wives had satisfied him by their devotion. Thus, he gave his mercy to those Brahmanas as well as to their chaste wives, who had no one to associate with except their husbands. In that place, the coward men, headed by Lord Krishna's father Nanda Maharaj, were somehow or other preparing an elaborate sacrifice to Lord Indra, and Lord Krishna reacted as follows. Tadabhignyampi Bhagavan Sarvatma Sarvadarshana Pashrayan Vanato Prachad Vridhananda Purogaman. Being the omniscient supersoul, the Supreme Lord Krishna already understood the situation, yet he still humbly inquired from the elders, headed by his father Nanda Maharaj. Lord Krishna was eager to enact his pastime of lifting Govardhan hill and defeating the false pride of Indra, and thus he cleverly inquired from his father about the imminent sacrifice. Katyatam me pita yo koyam sambramo va upagata kim phalam kasya vodesha kena va sadhyate makha. Lord Krishna said, my dear father, kindly explain to me what his great endeavor of yours is all about. What is it meant to accomplish? If this is a ritual sacrifice, then for whose satisfaction is it intended, and by what means is it going to be executed? Etad bruhi mahan kamo mahyam sushrashave pita nahi gopyam hi sadhunam kritam sarvatmanamiha astya savya paradrishtinam amrito dasta Visham. Please tell me about it, O Father. I have a great desire to know, and am ready to hear in good faith. Certainly no secrets are there to be kept by saintly personalities who see all others as equal to themselves. and who have no conception of mine and another's, and who do not consider who is a friend, who is an enemy, and who is neutral. Lord Krishna's father might have thought that his son was a mere child and thus could not properly question the validity of Vedic sacrifice. But the Lord's clever statement here would certainly have convinced Nanda that Sri Krishna was making a serious, not a whimsical inquiry, and that a serious answer should thus be given. Udasinorivad varjya atmavad suhrujit uchyate. One who is neutral may be avoided like an enemy, but a friend should be considered like one's own self. Even if Nanda Maharaj did not see friends, enemies, and neutral parties as entirely equal, Lord Krishna, being Nanda Maharaj's son, was certainly a most trustworthy friend and should therefore not be left out of intimate discussions. In other words, Nanda Maharaj might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform, and thus Lord Krishna furnished additional reasons why his father should trust him and reveal the entire purpose of the sacrifice. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Nanda Maharaj stood silent, doubting his position of parental aloofness. Since Garga Muni had predicted that his son would be equal to Narayan in his qualities, and the young boy had already conquered and killed many powerful demons. Gyatva gyatva cha karmani janoyam anutishtati vidusha karma siddhi syad yatha na vidusho bhavet. When people in this world perform activities, sometimes they understand what they are doing and sometimes they don't. Those who know what they are doing achieve success in their work, whereas ignorant people do not. The Lord here informs his father that people should perform a particular ceremony or activity only after thoroughly understanding it, through discussions with friends. We should not be blind followers of tradition. If a person doesn't even know what he's doing, how can he be successful in his work? This essentially is the Lord's argument in this verse. Since Krishna, as the young child of Nanda, would naturally be expected to show enthusiasm for his father's religious activities, it was the father's duty to give the son a thorough explanation of the ceremony. Tattatavat kriya yogo bhagavat bhavatam kim vicharita adava lokikas tanme prichata sadhu bhanyatam. Being the case, this ritualistic endeavor of yours should be certainly explained to me. Is it a ceremony based on scriptural injunction or simply a custom of ordinary society? Srinanda vacha prajanyo bhagavan indro meghastasyatma murtaya te bhivarshanti bhutanam prinanam jivanam paya. Nanda Maharaj replied, the great Lord Indra is the controller of the rain. The clouds are his personal representatives, and they directly provide rainwater, which gives happiness and sustenance to all creatures. Without clean water, the earth could not possibly provide food or drink for anyone. Nor could there be cleanliness. Thus, it would be difficult to overestimate the value of rain. Tam tatavayam anyecha varmucham patim ishwaram Dravyastad retasa siddhair yajante kratubhi nara. Not only we, my dear son, but also many other men worship him, the Lord and Master of the rain-giving clouds. We offer him grain and other paraphernalia of worship produced through his own discharge in the form of rain. Nanda Maharaj patiently tried to explain the facts of life to his young son, Sri Krishna. But in fact, Nanda and all the residents of Vrindavan would learn an astonishing lesson as explained in this chapter. Tacheshenopajivanti trivarga falahetave pumsam purushakaranam prajanya falabhavana. By accepting the remnants of sacrifices performed to Indra, people sustain their lives and accomplish the threefold aims of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Thus, Lord Indra is the agent responsible for fruitive success of industrious people. One might object that people sustain themselves by farming, industry, and so on. But as previously mentioned, all human and non-human endeavors depend on food and drink, which cannot be produced without ample rain. By the word Trivarga, Nanda further points out that the prosperity achieved through the sacrifice for Indra is meant not merely for sense gratification, but also for religiosity and economic development. Unless people are well fed, it is difficult for them to execute their duties, and without performance of duty, it is very difficult to be religious. Ya enam rishrajed dharmam param paryagatam nara Kamat Veshad Bhaya Lobhat Savai Napnoti Sobhanam. This religious principle is based on sound tradition. Anyone who rejects it out of lust, enmity, fear, or greed will certainly fail to achieve good fortune. If a person neglects his religious duties because of lust, envy, fear, or greed, his life will never be brilliant or perfect. Sri Shukha Vacha Vacho Nashamya Nandasya Tathanyesham Rajaukasam Indraya Maunam Janayan Pitaram Praha Keshava. Shukadeva Goswami said, when Lord Keshava Krishna heard the statements of his father, Nanda, another senior resident of Raj, he addressed his father as follows to arouse anger in Lord Indra. Sri Sridhar Swami explains that Lord Krishna's intention was not simply to insult a demigod, but rather to knock down the great mountain of false pride that had arisen within the Lord's tiny servant, who was supposed to represent the Lord as Indra. By lifting Govardhan Hill, Lord Krishna would thus initiate a blissful annual festival called Govardhan Puja. And he would further enjoy the pleasant pastime of dwelling for several days beneath the hill with all his loving devotees. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Karmana Jayate Jantu Karmana Naiva Praliyate Shukham Dukkham Bhayam Kshemam Karmanaiva Bhipadyate. Lord Krishna said, it is by force of karma that a living entity takes birth, and it is by karma alone that he meets his destruction. His happiness, distress, fear, and sense of security all arise as the effects of karma. Lord Krishna minimized the importance of the demigods by speaking the philosophy known as Karmavad or Karma Mimamsa, which basically is atheism with a belief in reincarnation. According to this philosophy, there are subtle laws of nature that reward or punish us according to how we act. As you sow, so shall you reap. In a future life, one reaps the fruit of his present work. And this is the sum and substance of reality. Lord Krishna, being God himself, could hardly be a serious proponent of his mediocre philosophy. In the role of a young boy, he was simply teasing his pure devotees by preaching it. Sri Jiva Goswami points out that Lord Krishna was thinking, why are these eternal associates of mine appearing as my father and other relatives and friends, so caught up in this worship of Indra? Thus, although the Lord's main purpose was to take away the false pride of Indra, he also wanted to remind his eternal devotees that they need not divert their attention to other so-called gods, since in fact his devotees were already living with the supreme absolute truth, the Almighty Lord himself. Asti ched Ishvara kaschid Palarupyanya karmanam kartaram bhajate sopi nyahya kartu prabhurhisha. Even if there is some supreme controller who awards all others the results of their activities, he must also depend upon the performers engaging in the activity. After all, there is no question of being the bestower of fruitive results unless fruitive activities have actually been performed. Here Lord Krishna argues that if there is a supreme controller, he must depend on a performer of activity to reciprocate with, and must therefore also be subject to the laws of karma, being obliged to award happiness and distress to conditioned souls according to the laws of good and evil. This superficial argument neglects the obvious point that laws of nature that prescribe the good and bad results of pious and impious acts are themselves creations of all good, Supreme Lord. Being the creator and sustainer of these laws, the Lord is not subject to them. Furthermore, the Lord is not dependent on the work of the conditioned souls, since he is satisfied and complete within himself. Out of his all-merciful nature, he awards the results appropriate to our activities. That which we call destiny, fate, or karma is an elaborate and subtle system of reward and punishments meant for gradually encouraging conditioned souls to evolve the nature of perfect consciousness, which is their original constitutional nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has so dexterously formulated and applied the laws of material nature governing punishing and rewarding for human behavior that the living being is discouraged from sin and encouraged towards goodness, without suffering any significant interference with his free will as an eternal soul. In contrast to the material nature, the Lord exhibits his essential nature in the spiritual world, where he reciprocates the eternal love of his pure devotee. Such loving affairs are based completely on the mutual freedom of the Lord and his devotee, not on mechanical reciprocity of coinciding selfish interests. Supreme Lord, assisted by his pure devotees, repeatedly offers the conditioned souls of this world the opportunity to give up their bizarre attempt at exploiting the material universe and go back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Considering all these points, the atheistic arguments given here by Lord Krishna in a playful mood are not to be taken seriously. Kim indrineha bhutanam swasa karmanuvartinam anishe nanyatha kartum svabhava vihitam nrinam. Living beings in this world are forced to experience the consequences of their own particular previous work. Since Lord Indra cannot in any way change the destiny of human beings, which is born of their own nature, why should people worship him? Lord Krishna's argument here is not a negation of free will. If one accepts the existence of karma as a system of laws awarding actions of our present activities, then we ourselves, according to our nature, will decide our future. Our happiness and distress in this life have already been adjudicated and fixed according to our previous activities. And not even the demigods can change that. They must award us the prosperity and poverty, sickness or health, happiness or distress due us by our previous work. However, we still retain the freedom to select a pious or impious mode of activity in this life. And the choice we make will determine our future suffering and enjoyment. For example, if I was pious in my last life, in this life the demigods may reward me great material wealth, but I am free to spend my riches for good or for bad purposes, and my choice will determine my future life. Thus, although no one can change the karmic results due him in this life, everyone still retains his free will, by which he determines what his future situation will be. Lord Krishna's argument here is quite interesting. However, it neglects the overriding consideration that we are all eternal servants of God and must satisfy him by all that we do. Swabhavatantro hi jana swabhavam anuvartate swabhavastam idam sarvam sadeva suramanusam. Every individual is under the control of his own conditioned nature. Thus, he must follow that nature. This entire universe, with all its demigods, demons, and human beings, is based on the conditioned nature of their living entities. Lord Krishna here elaborates upon the argument given in the previous verse. Since everything depends on swabhava, or one's conditioned nature, why bother worshipping God or the demigods? This argument would be sublime if swabhava, or conditioned nature, were all powerful, but unfortunately it is not. There is a supreme controller and we must worship him, as Lord Krishna will emphatically reveal in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. For now, however, he is content to tease his relatives. Dehan uchava chanjantur prapyotsrujati karmana shatru mitra mudasina karmeva gururishvara. Because it is karma that causes the conditioned living entities to accept and then give up different high and low grade material bodies, this karma is his enemy, friend, and neutral witness, his spiritual master and controlling lord. Even the demigods are bound and limited by the laws of karma. That Indra himself is subordinate to the laws of karma is explicitly stated in the Brahma Samhita. Yasvindra Gopa Mathavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti. The Supreme Lord Govinda awards all creatures the appropriate results of their work. This is as true for mighty Indra, the Lord of the material heavens, as it is for the germ called Indragopa. The Bhagavad Gita 7:20 also states, Kameshtashrita prapadyante nyadevata. Only those who have lost their intelligence because of various material desires surrender unto demigods rather than worship the Supreme Lord. In fact, the demigods cannot award benefits to anyone independently, as stated by Lord Krishna in the Gita. Mayeva vitani hitan. All benefits are ultimately issued by the Lord himself. That is not altogether incorrect to say that is useless. That demigod worship is useless, since even the demigods are under the laws of karma. In fact, this is the case, but Lord Krishna, the Supreme Absolute Truth, is not subordinate to the laws of karma. Rather, he can independently offer or withhold his favor. This is confirmed in the verse from the Brahma Samhita quoted above. The third line, which is Karmani nirdhati chukintu bhakti bhajam. The Supreme Lord burns up all the accumulated karma and those engaged in his loving service. Not only is Lord Krishna above the laws of material action and reaction, but he can immediately dissolve these laws, for anyone who satisfies him through loving service. Thus, the Almighty God is supreme in absolute freedom, and by surrendering to him, we can escape the bonds of karma and stop accepting their dismal rule as supreme. Tasmat sampujayet karma sabhavastha swakarma krit anjasa yena varteta tad evasya hi daivatam. Therefore, one should seriously worship work itself. A person should remain in the position corresponding to his nature and should perform his own duty. Indeed, that by which we may live nicely is really our worshipable deity. Lord Krishna here proposes the modern, if absurd, philosophy that our work, our occupation, is really God, and that we should therefore simply worship our work. Upon close scrutiny, we observe that our work is nothing more than the interaction of the material body with the material nature. As Lord Krishna himself states in a more serious mood in the Bhagavad Gita, Guna Guneshu Vartanta. Karma Mimamsa philosophy accepts that good activity in this life will give us a better next life. If this is true, there must be some type of conscious soul different from the body. And if that is the case, why should a transcendental soul worship the interaction of temporary body with material nature? If the word sampujayet karma here means that one should worship the laws of karma governing our activities, then one may astutely ask that what it means to worship laws, and indeed, what might be the origin of such laws, who is maintaining them, and who is maintaining them. To say that laws have created or are maintaining the world is a meaningless proposition, since there's nothing about the nature of a law that indicates that it could generate the existential situation. It is supposed to govern. In fact, worship is meant for Krishna himself, and this real conclusion will be clearly revealed in this chapter. Ajivyai kataram bhavam yastvanyam upajivati natasmad vindate kshemam Jara naryasati yatha. One thing is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else. How can we achieve any real benefit? We would be like an unfaithful woman who can never achieve any actual benefit by consorting with her paramour. The word kshema means actual prosperity, not merely the accumulation of money. Here, Lord Krishna boldly argues that just as a woman can never achieve actual dignity or enlightenment from an illicit lover, the residents of Vrindavan will never be happy by neglecting the real source of their prosperity and worshipping Indra instead. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the audacity that child Krishna displayed before his father and other elders should be understood as an exhibition of transcendental anger aroused when he saw his eternal devotees worshipping an insignificant demigod. Varteta brahmana vipro Rajanyo rakshaya bhuva Vaishyastu vartaya jivech Shudrastu dvijasevaya. The Brahmana maintains his life by studying and teaching the Vedas, and the members of the royal order by protecting the earth, the Vaishya by trade, and the Shudra by serving the higher twice-born classes. After glorifying karma and work, Lord Krishna now explains what he means by prescribed duties born of one's nature. He was not referring to any whimsical activity, but rather the religious duties prescribed in the Varnashrama of Vedic social system. Krishi Vanikya Goraksha Kusidam Turyam Uchyate Varta Chaturvidha Tatra Vayam Govrittayo Nisham. The occupational duties of the Vaishya are conceived in 4 divisions: farming, commerce, cow protection, and money lending. Out of these, we as a community are always engaged in cow protection. Svatvam rajastama iti sityutpatya antahetava rajasotpadyate vishwam anyonyam vidham jagat. The causes of creation, maintenance, and destruction are the 3 modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. In particular, the mode of passion creates the universe and through sexual combination causes it to be full of variety. Anticipating the possible objection that a livelihood based on cows certainly depends on Lord Indra, who supplies rain, Lord Krishna here introduces a mechanistic theory of existence known as atheistic Sankhya. The tendency to attribute exclusive causality to the apparent mechanistic functions of nature is an old tendency indeed. 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna referred to a doctrine already well known in human society. Rajasa chodita megha varshantyam bhuni sarvata prajastair eva siddhyanti mahindra kim karishyati. Impelled by the modes of passion, the clouds pour down their rain everywhere, and by this rain all creatures gain their sustenance. What has the great Indra to do with this arrangement? Lord Krishna continues his mechanistic explanation of existence, concluding, Mahendra Kim Karishyati. Who needs the great Indra, since the rain sent by the clouds, which are in turn impelled by the modes of passion, is actually producing everyone's food? The word Sarvata indicates that the clouds magnanimously send their rain even on the ocean, rocks, and barren land, where there is no apparent necessity for such sweet water. Nana purojana pada nagrama nagrihavayam vanokasastat nityam vanashaila nivasina. My dear father, our home is not in the cities or towns or villages, but being forest dwellers, we always live in the forest and on the hills. Lord Krishna here points out that the residents of Vrindavan should recognize their relationship with Govardhan Hill and with the forest of Vrindavan, and not worry about the distant demigod like Indra. Having concluded his argument, Lord Krishna makes a radical proposal in the following verse. Tasmad gavam brahmananam adrishcharabhyatammakha ya indra yaga sambharas tarayam sadhyatammakha. Therefore may a sacrifice for the pleasure of the cows and the brahmanas and Govardhan Hill begin. With all the paraphernalia collected for worshipping Indra, let this sacrifice be performed instead. Lord Krishna is famous as Go Brahmana Hita, the well-wishing friend of the cows and the brahmanas. Lord Krishna specifically included the local brahmanas in his proposal because he is always devoted to those who are devoted to the godly Vedic culture. Pachyantam vividha paka supanta paya sadhaya samyavapupa sashkulya sarvadohasya grihatam. Let many different kinds of foods be cooked, from sweet rice to vegetable soup. Many kinds of fancy cakes, both baked and fried, should be prepared, and all the available milk products should be taken for the sacrifice. The word supa indicates bean broth and also liquid vegetables. Thus, to celebrate the Govardhan Puja, Lord Krishna called for hot preparations such as soup, cold preparations like sweet rice, and all types of milk products. Huyantam agnaya samyag brahmane brahmavadibi anyam bahugunam tebhyo teyam vodhenu dakshina. The brahmanas, who are learned in the Vedic mantras, must properly invoke this sacrificial fire. Then you should feed the priests with nicely prepared food and reward them with cows and other gifts. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, Lord Krishna instructed his father and other residents of Vrindavan in the technical details of this Vedic sacrifice to ensure the quality of the sacrifice and also to inspire Nanda and others with faith in the concept of such a sacrifice. Thus the Lord mentioned that there must be orthodox brahmanas, regular sacrificial fires, and proper distribution of charity, and things were to be done in order given by the Lord. Anebhyas chasva chandala patitebhyo yatharhata yavasam cha gavam dattva giraye diyatam bali. After giving the appropriate food to everyone else, including such fallen souls as dogs and dog eaters, you should give grass to the cows and then present your respectful offerings to Govardhan Hill. Swalankrita bhuktavanta swanulipta suvasasa pradakshinam cha kuruta govipranala parvatan. After everyone has eaten to his satisfaction, you should all dress and decorate yourselves handsomely, smear your bodies with sandalwood paste, and then circumambulate the cows, the brahmanas, the sacrificial fires, and Govardhan Hill. Lord Krishna wanted all the human beings and even the animals to eat nice Bhagavad Prasad, sanctified foods offered to the Lord to enthuse his relatives with a festive mood. He requested them to dress beautifully with fine clothes and ornaments and to refresh their bodies with luxurious sandalwood paste. This essential activity, however, was the circumambulation. The essential activity, however, was the circumambulation of the holy brahmanas, cows, and sacrificial fires, and especially Govardhan Hill. Etam mama matam tata kriyatam yadi rochate ayam go brahmanar drinam mayam cha daito makha. This is my idea, O Father, and you may carry it out if it appeals to you. Such a sacrifice will be very dear to the cows, the brahmanas in Govardhan Hill, and also to me. Whatever is pleasing to the brahmanas, the cows, and the Supreme Lord himself is auspicious and beneficial for the entire world. Spiritually blind modern people do not understand this and instead adopt a scientific approach to life that is rapidly destroying the entire earth. Sri Shukha Uvacha Kalatmana Bhagavata Sakradarpa Jighamsaya Proktam Nishamya Nandadya Sadhva Grinanta Tadvacha. Shukadeva Goswami said, Lord Krishna, who is himself powerful time, desired to destroy the false pride of Lord Indra. When Nanda and the senior men of Vrindavan heard Krishna's statement, they accepted his words as proper. Tatacha vyadadhu sarvam yataha madhusudana vachayitva swastyayadnam tadravyena giridvijan upahritya balin samyag adrita yavasamgavam godhanani puraskritya girim chakrupra dakshinam. The cowherd community then did all that Madhusudana had suggested. They arranged for the brahmanas to recite the auspicious Vedic mantras and use the paraphernalia that had been intended for Indra's sacrifice. They presented offerings to Govardhan Hill, and the brahmanas with reverential respect. They also gave grass to the cows. Then placing the cows, bulls, and calves in front of them, they circumambulated Govardhan. The residents of Vrindavan were simply devoted to Lord Krishna. That was the sum and substance of their existence. Being the Lord's eternal associates, they were ultimately not concerned with Lord Indra or ritualistic sacrifice. They were certainly not interested in the mechanistic philosophy that Krishna had just spoken to them. They simply loved Krishna, and out of intense affection, they did exactly what he had requested. Their simple loving mentality was not small-mindedness or ignorance, since they were devoted to the supreme absolute truth, who contains within himself all existence. Thus, the residents of Vrindavan constantly experience the highest essential truth underlying all other truths, and that is Sri Krishna himself, the cause of all causes, and that which sustains the existence of all that exists. The residents of Vrindavan were overwhelmed in loving service to that supreme absolute truth. Therefore, they were the most fortunate, most intelligent, and most pragmatic of all living beings. Anamsya anadudh yuktani checharuhya swalankrita Gopyascha Krishna Viryani Gayantya Sa Dvijasisha. As the beautifully ornamented cowherd ladies followed along, riding on wagons drawn by oxen, they sang the glories of Lord Krishna, and their songs mingled with the brahmanas' chanting of benediction. Krishnastvan tamam rupa gopa vishrambhanam gata shailosmiti bhuvan bhuri valim adad brihad vapu. Krishna then assumed an unprecedented huge form to instill faith in the cowherd men, declaring, I am Govardhan Mountain. He ate the abundant offerings. This chapter 24 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada writes, when everything was complete, Krishna assumed a great transcendental form and declared to the inhabitants of Vrindavan that he was himself Govardhan Hill, in order to convince the devotees that Govardhan Hill and Krishna himself are identical. Then Krishna began to eat, and the food offered there. All the food offered there. The identity of Krishna and Govardhan Hill is still honored. And great devotees take rocks from Govardhan Hill and worship them exactly as they worship the deity of Krishna in the temples. The followers of the Krishna consciousness movement and may therefore collect small rocks or pebbles from Govardhan Hill and worship them at home, because this worship is as good as deity worship. Lord Krishna has induced the residents of Vrindavan to assume a significant risk on his behalf. He convinced them to neglect a sacrifice to what is, after all, the powerful government of the universe, and to worship a hill called Govardhan instead. The cowherd community did all this simply out of love for Krishna, and now to convince them that their decision was correct, Lord Krishna appeared in an unprecedented, huge transcendental form and demonstrated that he himself was Govardhan Hill. Tasmai namo vraja janai saha chakratmanatmane Aho pasyata shailo so rupino nugraham vyadat. Together with the people of Raj, the Lord bestowed down to his form of Govardhan Hill, thus in effect offering obeisances to himself. Then he said, just see how this hill has appeared in person and bestowed mercy upon us. It is clear from this verse that Lord Krishna had expanded himself and was preparing his normal form among the festival goers of Vrindavan while simultaneously manifesting himself as a great form of Govardhan Hill. Thus, in his form as a child, Krishna led the residents of Vrindavan in bowing down to his new incarnation as Govardhan Hill, and to all he pointed out the great mercy bestowed by this divine form of Govardhan. Lord Krishna's amazing transcendental activities were certainly in keeping with the festive atmosphere. Esho vajanato martyan kamarupi vanokasha hantyasmai namasyama sarmane atmano kavam. The residents, this Govardhan Hill, assuming any form he wishes, will kill any residents of the forests who neglect him. Therefore, let us pay our obeisances to him for the safety of ourselves and our cows. Kamarupi indicates that the form of Govardhan can manifest as poisonous snakes, wild animals, falling rocks, and so on, all of which are competent to kill a human being. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the Lord presented 6 theoretical points in this chapter. That karma alone is sufficient to determine one's destiny, that one's conditioned nature is the supreme controller, that the modes of nature are the supreme controller, that the Supreme Lord is simply a dependent aspect of karma, that he is under the control of karma, and that one's occupation is the actual worshipable deity. The Lord presented these arguments not because he believed them, but rather because he wanted to stop the impending sacrifices to Indra and divert it to himself in the form of Govardhan Hill. In this way, the Lord desired to agitate the falsely proud demigod. Iti adri godvajamakham vasudeva prachodita yatha vidhaya te gopa saha krishna vrajam yayu. The members of the cowherd community have thus been inspired by Lord Vasudeva to properly execute the sacrifice to Govardhan Hill. The cows and the brahmanas returned with Lord Krishna to their village of Braja. Although the Govardhan Puja was performed in a blissful and successful way, the matter was hardly finished. Lord Krishna is after all tremendously powerful, and he received the news of the Govardhan sacrifice with burning anger, what ensued will be described in the following chapter. Thus ends the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the 10th canto, 24th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, titled Worshipping Govardhan Hill. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.